Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Northern Kentucky Spotlight Podcast presented by CBG. I'm your host, Sarah Brookbank, and I hope you guys are having a great day so far. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So today on the podcast, we are joined by Rich Wurth of CHNK Behavioral Health. He talks about the importance of mental health discussions as well as their range of services. Also on the podcast today, we are joined by Megan Marshall of Adopt a Class, who highlights the impact that local leaders can have on the next generation. Thank you to our podcast sponsors, CBG, our title sponsor, C Crew Consulting, our digital sponsor, and our episode sponsor, Schneller Knockelman. We have some exciting news at the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. We've recently rolled out a new website and online member center. If you have not already logged in, I encourage you to do so. And if you have any issues accessing your new member center, please contact Lynn Ablin at 859-578-6390 or at lablin@nkychamber.com. We are also gearing up for our next Eggs and Issues happening on Tuesday, May 21st. Join us for Eggs and Issues, Building a Better NKY, the vision of development legend Bill Butler. We will be joined by Bill Butler, chairman of the board of Corporex, who will share his vision to build a better Northern Kentucky. You can register for that event now at nkychamber.com/events. Now, let's go hear our business news roundup from Link NKY, meet our members of the week, hear from our sponsors, and I'll be back with this week's guests.
The Link NKY Business Roundup is sponsored by Payroll Partners. Business owners, CFOs, and HR pros just don't have time for hold times and hotlines. They need payroll partners. Welcome back to another Link NKY Weekly Business News Roundup. For Link NKY, I'm Noah Jones, here to fill you in on all the latest news from the past business week. Let's begin. Residents of Richwood County Estates are facing a crucial decision as a real estate developer seeks a zone change for a 34.87-acre plot of land adjacent to their subdivision. Mark Jacobs, representing Jake's Farm Real Estate Development Company, aims to develop the property into a 55 and older community named Cornerstone Gardens. However, if the zone change is denied, Jacobs has threatened to use the land for a free-range pig farm. Concerns from residents include potential traffic impacts and loss of rural landscape. The outcome of the zoning decision will determine the future character of the area as well, with residents divided over the proposed developments. The Boone County Planning Commission recently gave the green light to changes proposed for a Union Marketplace, a commercial development project spearheaded by Terrace Holdings. These modifications, approved unanimously during a May 1st meeting, include adding a 2,200 square foot building, erecting a monument sign along the US 42, and creating a driveway linking the site to a nearby Kroger. Ober's Flowers is set to occupy the new building. The commission ensured the sign adheres to specific regulations regarding its height, size, and absence of electronic features. Originally announced by Braxton Brewing Company in 2022, Union Marketplace initially aimed to feature a brewery, a pizzeria, and a Grader's Scoop Shop, with additional amenities like green spaces. While progress has been made, particularly with the completion of the Grader's outlet, work on the brewery-pizzeria combination has been slow. Terrace Holdings co-owner Adam Cheney presented the revised plan, emphasizing similarities to their existing commercial complexes like the Point in Westchester, Ohio. The Kenton County Planning Commission unanimously approved a public review of the new Latonia branch of the Kenton County Library on Thursday. The new branch will be located in the Latonia Commerce Center along Winston Avenue in Covington. Ensweiler Building Institute, Big Lots, and Fairhaven Thrift Store are also located to the Commerce Center. The land has about 12.4 acres in area, and the building itself contains about 12,000 square feet. The branch will share about 560 parking spaces with the other businesses at the center. Finally, New Riff Distilling, based in Newport, had an impressive showing at the 2024 San Francisco World Spirits Competition, securing a total of 10 medals. The competition, known for its blind tasting conducted by a select panel of judges, announced the results on April 30th. New Riff's 6-year-old malted rye whiskey was honored with a prestigious double gold award, the highest accolade possible. Additionally, several of the other spirits received gold medals, including their Kentucky Sour Mash, Single Malt Whiskey, Bottled in Bond Kentucky Straight Rye Whiskey, Single Barrel Rye Whiskey, Balboa Rye Whiskey, Bottled in Bond Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, and the 8-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Among their silver medalists were the single barrel bourbon, Nocino liqueur, and winter whiskey. The impressive recognition underscores New Roof's commitment to high-producing, high-quality spirits. Well, that's it for this week's Link NKY Business News Roundup. For Link NKY, I'm Noah Jones. Thanks again for watching.
Why would you travel to England?
For football.
To go or not to go? That is an easy question. To visit the land of Shakespeare.
To take in all the sights.
Authentic fish and chips.
To experience arts and culture.
2 words, British Open.
To visit my family.
Same reason I go anywhere. For a pint of beer. To start my trip through Europe.
Whatever your reason, there's no better time than now.
Ranking on Google Search and Maps is easy to understand, but hard to do. It requires constant effort and attention, uploading new photos, responding to Google reviews, writing weekly posts, and checking suggested updates. Google listing optimization takes experience and time, and there are no shortcuts. C-Crew gives your Google My Business account the steady, consistent attention it needs to be effective, optimizing, updating, and expanding critical content every single week. From local retail stores to large regional networks, C-Crew generates content, establishes benchmarks, and creates dramatic, measurable increases in engagement. So what can C-Crew do for your business? More calls, more clicks, more clients.
Congratulations to our members of the week. You can learn more about these businesses by following the Northern Kentucky Chamber on social media, where we will highlight one of these businesses each day. Now, let's meet our members of the week. LifeMade is busy creating and innovating better products, better for their partners and better for the environment at large. From retail stores and restaurants to manufacturing and fabrication shops, Cincinnati Commercial Contracting's expert construction management team provides knowledge and attention to detail to each project. Throughout their long history of uplifting children and parents, Beach Acres Parenting Center has served as a community partner for essential resources, parenting tools, and wraparound care. Veritas Logistics is a third-party logistics firm created to stand out in a crowded industry by prioritizing people. Focal Point Business Coaching and Leadership Training is passionate about working with business owners and leaders as a trusted advisor in companies that desire to grow. Hi, everyone. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Wurth, who's the CEO of CHNK Behavioral Health. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So CHNK, you guys are pretty well established in Northern Kentucky. You guys have been here forever.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about your organization and what you guys do.
Well, April is actually our anniversary month for our articles of incorporation. We were actually incorporated back in 1880.
Oh, my goodness.
And began services in 1882, providing orphanage care to some of the most vulnerable youth and families in Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, well, congratulations. So how many years is that officially?
Well, we're already in our plans for our 150th anniversary.
That's incredible.
So we're in the 140 plus year mark, and we've already started festivity planning for our 150th anniversary.
That is incredible. So you guys, longevity, doing great work and great services for people in this community. Talk to us a little bit about what you do today and how that's kind of changed.
Well, I think that the key to our success in these past years has been how do we evolve to meet the changing needs of Northern Kentucky and the Commonwealth itself. In the 1800s, Northern Kentucky needed us to be an orphanage, and we obliged. Mm-hmm. That need changed. There was no longer a need for orphanages per se, as more and more women entered the workforce after World War II, certainly, and Rosie the Riveter movement. More and more women were able to sustain a family. That wasn't necessarily the case back in the 1800s, when there would be the death of a father. Many times that spelt a financial calamity for a family. And so we evolved as orphanages were no longer needed, as there were more state and federal programs that provided a safety net to families. we had to meet new needs. In the 1980s, we pivoted and we started caring for youth who had experienced abuse and neglect and who were in the custody of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, sometimes known as state's custody. We are still doing that type of work even today. And then in 2014, we entered what I call our third chapter. And so there was yet another evolution. And that broadened our relevancy in the sense that we became a healthcare organization to the general public. So a greater demand for mental health care services, a greater demand for substance use disorder services, and there quite simply were not enough providers in Kentucky to meet that need. And so we had to change and evolve and meet that need, and that's our story today. We are a healthcare provider serving children, adolescents, young adults, older adults, and we're doing it in more counties in Kentucky than ever before.
Yeah, you guys provide a lot of services for some people that really desperately need those services. And you mentioned mental health in providing that service. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I know you guys are doing a lot of work about that. So talk to us about your theme. This year's theme is Time to Check In. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you're right. I mean, mental health concerns are so palpable right now. I think, you have to be living under a rock not to have experienced the fact that we have a crisis locally and around the nation. It does not take a nuclear physicist to figure out. There have been so many episodes of mass violence, and so many times episodes of mass violence in the country seem to go back to someone who may be dealing with a mental health issue, may be dealing with a substance use disorder issue. There may have been red flags that have been missed, not all the times, but there is a significant number of times where that is happening. And I think during the pandemic, we were so accustomed to making sure that our neighbors were okay. We had a physical health calamity on our hands. And we got into some really good habits of, maybe I should go and check in on my elderly neighbor. And those brief check-ins were life-sustaining to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Americans across the country. And yet, when the pandemic stopped, so did that type of check-in.
Right.
So how do we replicate that kind of neighborly, familial check-in with those who are in our orbit and those who may not have others to care for them in such a way? That mental health check-in could simply be a matter of asking folks, how are you feeling today? I think that simple question can go a long way. We're so accustomed to simply kind of brushing it off. I'm fine, I'm okay, or I'm tired. And we really have a hard time, I think, in our culture today, really plugging into what is the emotion that is stirring in my heart today. Am I grateful? Am I anxious? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Sometimes it's just nice to have a brief conversation with someone about where you might be standing in terms of emotions.
Yeah, I love it works some days. And obviously these conversations have really changed and evolved since the pandemic, especially in the workplace. I know that there are some days when I'm at work and I'm like, hey guys, not the best mood, maybe leave me a little bit alone. And having those conversations can be so valuable. When you guys are working with children, and I know we have a lot of parents that watch and listen to this podcast. We were talking about how to approach mental health and mental wellness with children. Obviously, that's kind of your specialty. What can you advise? What's an effective way to check in?
Well, Children's Home of Northern Kentucky, CHNK Behavioral Health, was the first organization in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to adopt the sanctuary model of trauma-informed care. I know that's a mouthful. But the whole focus area was, how do we as an organization get more competent on handling trauma and on adverse childhood experiences, adverse community environments? So we have worked for years bringing the Sanctuary Model Kentucky. We were the first ones. We've now been joined by a second organization, Home of the Innocents in Louisville. We're glad to have them at our side in the sanctuary movement. But one of the tools in our toolkits with the sanctuary movement, one of the things that we like to do at CHNK with the kids who are in residential care or with adults who are in our adult services, or even with fellow employees, we like to check in using a 3-question system. And I think it can be really intriguing. Imagine a parent using this mechanism to check in with the kids before they head out to school in the morning. And the 3 questions that we use for our check-in at CHNK is, how are you feeling? And we try to avoid cop-out answers like fine, okay, tired.
Yeah.
What's the emotion that you're feeling today? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what's your goal today? What is it that you see that you can accomplish today? And then the 3rd question is, who's going to help you with that goal? Who can you ask for help? And while those questions can seem incredibly simple, and in fact, what I've recognized is that sometimes males have a harder time doing that check-in because they see it as, oh, this is silly. But they're not silly. They're profoundly important questions. The first question gets us plugged in to what's our emotional temperature. And to your point, you bring an emotional temperature to the office.
Right.
It may or may not have anything to do with your coworkers, but how great is it if your coworkers can have a check-in with you and they know that you came to work frustrated? It has nothing to do with them. It could have been because of a flat tire that you had this morning on the way to work. How great is it to put that out on the table? The second question really focuses us on, hey, life is short. I can spend my time chasing gnats, or maybe if I had a particular goal today, if I had something that I could say at the end of this day, man, I really feel great about that. I got that, whatever that is, checked off the list. And the third question I think is so profound because it reminds us none of us are Superman. None of us are Wonder Woman. All of us live in a community where it is not only okay, but essential that we ask for help. Those 3 questions would be a great way that parents could check in with their kids. Could be at any time. I mean, I know some families that use this exercise at midday or at dinner time. Timing's really not important, but I think it can provide a structure that parents can adopt easily.
Yeah, I think to your point, that's a structure that anybody can really adopt. I think all the time about, like you said, or what we were talking about at work, who's going to be able to help me meet this goal? You know, you can use that in your day-to-day life with a spouse or with a roommate or anybody. You can just be like, what are you trying to accomplish? What's going to make your day better? Who's going to help you make your day better? I love that.
Well, isn't it funny? I think that sometimes what can happen is that as we grow older, and as we get more important jobs in life, and we think, oh, well, this is what it means to be a competent professional. I really don't need help. I can handle that. I think culturally, we are rewarded for autonomy and individuality. I don't think that's as prevalent in the eastern part of the world, that there's a different cultural aspect, that there is not as much stigma for saying, hey, I really need some assistance here. And that's okay and valued and celebrated. But I think in the western part of the world, we really value autonomy. And sometimes that can feel really lonely and it can feel really isolating. And I think it can contribute to some of our mental health woes.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. And you mentioned the stigma, and obviously that has really changed over the years. It's changing since the pandemic. When you're working with these younger generations of kids, what kind of differences are you seeing with them in the mental health space versus maybe 20 years ago?
Yeah, it's night and day is what I would say. I'm going to be 57 in a few weeks, and I can certainly tell you that growing up, mental health was just not something you wanted to discuss. I mean, if a family member was dealing with depression, if there had been an issue with a suicide in the family, all of those things were just verboten. Those are things not to be discussed publicly. And there was shame involved so many times in those discussions. And I think I see such a refreshing evolution when it comes to those matters. I think young people today are much more likely to feel free to share that they might be open to seeing a therapist, a counselor, and a trusted adult who can help them navigate certain aspects of the journey of life. I certainly don't see the secrecy and the shame that maybe folks in my generation experience. I think while we are so accustomed to talking about the ills of social media, I think younger generations have seen social media as a tool. They have been able to see others when they have been vulnerable and discuss their own navigation of some of the difficulties in life. And so I think it's created more of an open and transparent world.
Yeah. And as we open up these conversations, I know one of the things that feels stressful when I guess this younger generation has kind of opened up about the fact that they're struggling a little bit more than the older generations, it kind of inflates those statistics. Obviously, the statistics back then weren't positively reflecting those actual issues. When you think about mental health awareness and mental wellness with younger people across the state, what kind of services are available? What kind of statistics are you seeing? And is there hope for the future? Are the kids going to be okay?
Well, I think we have to be honest with our assessment. There is a mental health crisis in our nation. There was a mental health crisis already at work before the COVID-19 pandemic. I think during the pandemic, many of our healthcare issues got swept under the rug. If you look, for example, at child abuse and child neglect reporting during the pandemic, those numbers of reports plummeted. It wasn't because there was a cessation of child abuse and child neglect. Similarly, I think you'll see that people struggling with mental health issues may have gone underreported, but they actually grew in intensity. We know that during the pandemic, there were people who were self-reporting more use of substance use, more use of alcohol, and concerning measures as well. The State of the Union address is somewhat concerning. We now know that suicide is the second leading cause of death with young people, with adolescents, and these are troubling statistics. We know that in the United States, in terms of some sobering statistics, that the average numbers of therapists to Americans would be somewhere around 350 Americans to every one mental health care therapist.
Oh my goodness.
If you get to Kentucky, that number goes to 4,000 Kentuckians to every one mental health care professional in certain counties throughout Kentucky, some of them not so far from northern Kentucky. And so that landscape, it feels daunting and it feels bleak. So what do we have going for us? Well, I think, to be quite candid, I'm proud of the work at CHNK Behavioral Health. One of the things that we knew years ago was that we had to start thinking differently. We had to move upstream. How do we get services when and where they are needed? What a tragedy it is that children have to be removed from their family of origin and placed in state's custody to receive the treatment that they may need in the mental health care arena. And yet that happens frequently where children are surrendered from their family of origin simply because the family cannot access services that they need. One of the complicating matters in Kentucky is that 1 out of every 3 Kentuckians uses a Kentucky Medicaid card to access services, including mental health services, including substance use disorder services. Well, that makes our work a little more difficult, right? Because there are a limited number of healthcare providers. Many of them know that the Kentucky Medicaid rates are not really that robust, and so they may not be in a position to serve that many Medicaid clients. What CHNK has been able to do, 90% of our revenues are associated with Kentucky Medicaid. And so we know from our founder and from the generations that have preceded us, that's exactly who we were created to serve.
Right.
who's the people who are going to serve those who do not have the resources that maybe their peers do. So that's exactly our focus area. And we need to move those services as upstream as possible. What does that look like? It looks like a residential care center who's been doing residential care for decades, stopping some of the inflow into residential care because we got smart enough to put targeted case managers and social workers and substance use disorder counselors in cars, driving to schools for school-based mental health care services and driving to homes where families were struggling with issues. So how do we get the right services at the right time, at the right place, at the right level of acuity so that we can interrupt some of these concerning patterns that we see emerging?
Yeah, it's a very complicated issue, a lot of multifaceted things going on. And it's so good to hear about all the important work you guys are doing across the state. It's vital to the next generation of leaders, to our next generation of workers, and just to our society in general. And when you think about mental health, obviously, like I said, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Yeah. What is for everyone to take away? Is there something that you would like to share with our viewers and listeners about mental health that you think is like the core takeaway?
Well, I think that, look, everyone in Kentucky wants the best Commonwealth we can get, right? Mm-hmm. We want happy children. We want happy families. We want communities that are safe and healthy and that are thriving. And I think sometimes what we miss is that there can be two secret ingredients that are poisoning the groundwater. And those two secret ingredients that can sometimes throw things off track so quickly would include a mental health issue, a mental illness, and a substance use disorder. And so many times they come together as a packaged deal. So many times they are the salt and pepper that's throwing things really askew. If you look at items that we're battling in the Commonwealth right now, such as the number of child abuse fatalities and near fatalities, if you look at issues around things like school absenteeism, even if you look at workforce development and how are we going to get enough folks ready and positioned well to thrive in the workplace, so many times what's poisoning our efforts is this undercurrent of folks who are dealing with undiagnosed and untreated mental health issues and with substance use disorders. The more we reduce stigma around those topics and the more we provide services when and where they're needed, the better off we are as an entire Commonwealth. The better off our schools will be, the better off our employers will be. And so I just invite all Kentuckians and all Northern Kentuckians listening to this podcast to think about, what can I do to elevate this conversation?
Yeah. I think that's so vitally important. And Rick, I really appreciate your time today. And we've touched on a lot of different topics. Other than that call to action that you just left us with, is there anything else that our viewers and listeners need to know about CHNK, how to get in touch with you, how to get involved, and anything like that?
Well, I just invite anyone who wants to learn more about our work. As I said, we've been doing this work since the 1880s. Our organization started simply with Amos Schinkel and some of his business companions. I think most of our listeners would recognize that name from the guy who founded and funded the Roebling Suspension Bridge Company. 16 years after he finished that bridge, he got our organization started. And it was started without one state tax dollar, without one federal tax dollars. It was just a group of Northern Kentuckians who got together, who decided they wanted to make things better. That's the kind of members we're still looking for today. Those are the kind of folks that we are looking for on our board. Those are the kind of folks that we need as employees, and we're constantly looking for new employees. And we're looking for partners who would be willing to help us financially, the donor community. All of that, if you're interested in any of and all of that, check us out at chnk.org.
Yeah. Well, that is great. Rick, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your organization. And I'll let you go about with your busy day.
So thanks so much, Sarah, for having me.
Hi, everyone. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Megan Marshall with Adopt a Class. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
This is very exciting.
It is very exciting. You guys do a lot of great work in the community with young students, but tell us about Adopt a Class and how it works.
So Adopt a Class is a nonprofit, and we serve underserved communities in schools, K through 8 students, and we work to provide career exposure and life skill development to students that may have a limited options or perspective in what their career options are. And we do that by partnering with community groups, but mostly corporate partners, civic, military, governmental, the city, and those teams go into the classrooms and provide mentorship, provide caring adults who are interested in these students, who can tell them you're capable, you're worthy, you can do this. That's the first thing we want them to do, is pour into the students, but then also they're going to teach them about the work that they do in their work.
Yeah, it's very valuable, like you said, serving different types of communities across the region. I know you guys were founded in Greater Cincinnati, and you're doing work in Northern Kentucky as well. When you talk about the students that you're working with, tell us about the impact that this mentorship has.
So the impact is huge on the students. We know the value of mentorship. There has been so much data about the value of mentorship. And, you know, the students that we serve often are more focused on the present day. They're focused on who's going to be home when I'm there. They may have food concerns. They may have stability concerns. And so really that mentor is helping them get out of that day-to-day thinking and start thinking toward the future. So when our mentors work with students, we train them and talk with them about, ask them questions about their future. It can be as simple as, what's happening this summer? What do you want to do with your future? What do you want to be when you grow up? And the funny thing is, the kids start asking that back to the adults, like, what did you want to be when I was your age, when you were my age? So that impact is huge. We are starting to see, as we transition students, so we're a K-8 program. And that's younger than most people think is necessary for career development and career pathways. But honestly, it's the right age.
Right.
Students and young people pick up so much information about their place in the world, what they're capable of, what their future looks like in that K-8 realm. And so we are really focused on that. So when they go and transition to the upper grades, they're ready. They've learned about what a welder does, what a banker does, what a pipe fitter does, what a doctor does, what an attorney does. So they're getting that exposure to those careers so that they can make behavioral and academic decisions that can not limit their possibilities.
Yeah, that's so important. I know when we talk that workforce aspect, and we're talking with our education partners here at the Chamber, that kindergarten readiness is a topic that we've been talking about for years. So it makes a lot of sense that getting exposure at a young age really helps these kids. So when you're talking about the mentors, you listed a range of different types of people who can be involved. What's the impact that that volunteering with you all has on these mentors or working with your organization? What are the benefits?
So, you know, the genius of our program is, number one, it's a team-based program. So we know through mentorship that the most important thing to provide to youth is some consistency and stability. So the genius of our program is that you're going in with team members from your organization, whether that be your military group or your civic community group or your corporate group. You go in a group of 5 to 7, and you provide that stability. So, you know, for me, for example, I'm a part of we adopt a class ourselves. And I've had some meetings during our our mentoring sessions, and I've been able to step out of that, and my team still goes in. So they're getting the consistency of that career development. So you asked about the corporate piece. I'll tell you what we're finding is that the mentors are reporting back to us that they feel more affiliated with their organization. Companies have told us that they think that it's helping with the turnover in their organizations. We're also seeing teamwork, the ability to get to know people that you work with in a new way, in a different way, often builds your respect for them, builds your relationship with them. So it makes you more efficient in work. and more effective because you understand each other better. I'll tell you, we've been a great answer after COVID to team building.
Yeah.
Because so many people have started working from home. We're seeing that gradually change and come back. So that team piece, there is nothing like seeing a CEO on the ground helping to build a wiring piece with a first or second grader. It gives you a whole new perspective on the people that you work with. I've even learned it in my own experience. The other thing that I like to talk about is what an opportunity for some leadership development.
Right.
Each of our teams has a lead from their organization who is responsible for coordinating. They're the point person for us. And that builds someone that might have some potential that for us it's high stakes, but for the organization it may not feel such high stakes to gain that leadership and develop some credibility within their own organization for leadership.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity to get involved and help a lot of people out. Obviously, our young workforce that is growing along with us that we're going to have to rely on here in a couple of years. When you talk about opportunities, I know that you said that Northern Kentucky is an area of growth for you all. Talk about your work in Northern Kentucky and what you guys would like to see.
Well, so we started about 20 years ago in Lower Price Hill. And it started because our founder was a business person who moved his business there. And he saw the importance of bringing down the walls between education and business for workforce development. He saw how important it was to develop the future leaders. One of our slogans is today's students, tomorrow's leaders. Mm-hmm. And it's true. Those students in those classrooms are our future workforce. They're our future community. So we started in that Lower Price Hill and we've grown. We're now serving 10,000 students in our region.
Wow.
We have 4,000 mentors, over 200 corporate partnerships. Our footprint in Northern Kentucky has been in Erlanger, Ludlow, and Covington so far. But really this year our focus is growing that Northern Kentucky footprint. We have been working with St. Elizabeth's and the Butler Foundation to help expand our funding for Northern Kentucky, to help us expand. We're going to be growing in the River City schools, again, in those served school districts that need that mentoring to help them dream bigger than they're currently dreaming as students. So we're really excited about that. Horizon Community Funds has supported us for over 15 years. And Duke Energy was one of the first partners in Northern Kentucky to go into a school district with us 15 years ago in Northern Kentucky. So, we say Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, but truly we're interested in our region.
Yeah.
We're interested in improving the region so that we're building tomorrow's leaders.
Yeah. So for organizations who want to get involved, get the ball rolling, how do they do that?
We're on every social media platform. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, you name it, we are out there. If you just type in Adopt a Class, you will see us. We have a great presence, and if you want to get involved, I would encourage you to just reach out to me, megan.marshall@aacmentors.org, and I will personally come and talk with you about our program. It's fantastic. And we're really seeing the difference it's making in our community.
Yeah, that's so vital, providing this resource to young students. And it's exciting to get to talk with you about. I know you guys also have a celebration breakfast coming up later in the year. I believe there are some nominations open. Do you want to touch on that for our viewers and listeners today?
So we do have a celebration breakfast. All of that information is on our website. And it's just a chance for us to get together and say thank you to our over 200 partners in the region. We cannot make our mission happen without our corporate partners. I like to say it's where the magic happens. We just facilitate. We're just a conduit of helping that happen. But without our corporate partners, we can't do that. So our celebration breakfast is at Duke Energy Center, and we are very excited about it. You can buy tickets through our website. You can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to get you tickets and get you coming to that event.
Yeah, well, that is so great. Well, Megan, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to learn more about Adopt a Class. Before I let you go, is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers and listeners about your organization?
I would. The last thing I want to share with you is I get a chance to see a lot of mentors in the classroom. I have about 45 teams that I am a point person for and help everything work for. My favorite time of leaving the school is following our teams out of the building, because every time I hear, this is the best hour of week I've had all month. It's 1 hour once a month. That's it, October through May. And they say, and every mentor says it's the best hour I've had. And I say, thank you so much for your partnership. And they say, no, thank you. This is amazing work. And I love being a part of it.
Yeah, that is so great. Well, Megan, thank you so much for sharing more about Adopt a Class with us today. It's been great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. We're looking forward to having a bigger footprint here.
Chris Knockelman with Schneller Knockelman Plumbing, Heating, and Air. It's spring now, but before you know it, our ACs are working overtime.
Dave, it's going to be warm soon.
Right now is a good time to get the AC serviced, right?
You can get your AC tuned up for only $59.
So get your $59 tune-up at
SKPHA.com. SKPHA. So if your plumbing and mechanical systems give you trouble, just remember our name, Schneller Knockelman.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about CHNK behavioral health from Rich and learning more about Adopt a Class from Megan. Thank you to our podcast sponsors, CVG, C Crew Consulting, and Schneller Knockelman. Don't forget to get your tickets for Eggs and Issues happening on Tuesday, May 21st on Building a Better NKY, the vision of development legend Bill Butler. That event will probably sell out, so don't wait to get your tickets. Finally, if you're a member who would like to be featured on the podcast, or if you're someone who is interested in joining the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, please reach out to Lynn Ablin. And if you're a member who would like to share your workforce strategies and resources on NKY at Work, please reach out to Nancy Spivey. You can find their contact information on the screen in front of you or at our staff directory at nkychamber.com. Thank you once again for tuning in. I'll talk to everyone next week.